Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host. Our mission is pretty simple, really. We dive into complex topics, pull out the key knowledge, the important stuff, so you can get up to speed quickly and hopefully find it interesting too.
And today, well, we're looking at something significant. The UK economy. There's been talk of growth coming, but it seems, well, delayed. We're going to explore why that might be.
Exactly. And to help us make sense of it all, we're really pleased to have Dr. James Fletcher with us. He's a highly respected economist and professor at the London School of Economics. It's brilliant to have your expertise here today.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And yes, a shout out and thanks to everyone watching Westferry Times. Some of today's points draw from discussions featured there.
So our aim today is clear. Get a handle on where the UK economy actually stands right now, dig into the specific reasons for this delayed growth we're seeing, and figure out what it means for you. We were, I think, initially looking at forecasts around 1.1% growth for early 2025. What's the picture now?
Yes, that's right. What's quite striking, really, is how several big pressures are coming together. We've still got elevated inflation, though the picture there is complex. Consumer confidence has definitely taken a knock.
Okay.
And the adjustments to post-Brexit trade, they're still working through creating challenges. Plus, of course, global events, geopolitical stuff especially, are really hitting energy and commodity prices.
So that original 1.1% figure,
Yeah.
where are we looking now for early 2025?
Well, the current consensus estimates have been revised quite a bit downwards,
Yeah.
nearer to 0.4%. But it's really important to stress even that isn't set in stone. It could easily shift again depending on how all these economic forces interact.
Right, 0.4%. Okay, let's try and unpack this a bit. Is this slowdown mainly down to these immediate global things happening, or are there deeper, more sort of fundamental structural issues within the UK economy itself playing a role?
That's a key question. If we look at the bigger picture, it's genuinely a mix of both. We're definitely feeling the effects of wider global trends, think higher interest rates pretty much everywhere, and a slowdown in big markets like China.
Mm-hmm.
But we absolutely can't ignore some significant structural things here in the UK. There's this persistent productivity gap compared to other advanced economies.
Yeah.
UK productivity is, well, estimated to be maybe 15–20% lower than the G7 average, for instance.
Wow, that's quite a gap.
It is. And we've got ongoing shortages of specific skills in various sectors, and of course, the still evolving trade relationship with the EU post-Brexit.
Okay, let's zoom in on the consumer side for a second. The cost of living, it's been such a huge story. How are households coping with all this?
The data suggests people are being pretty cautious. A lot of households seem to have largely spent the savings buffers they built up during the pandemic.
Right.
And although, yes, we have seen some positive real wage growth recently, wages rising faster than inflation for a bit, the reality is, with underlying inflation still noticeable, people's actual spending power remains, well, squeezed.
And that directly feeds into how people are spending, doesn't it?
Absolutely. What we're clearly seeing is a kind of prioritization of the essentials. People are being more selective, cutting back on, discretionary spending, the non-essentials. This caution, it naturally dampens overall economic activity because consumer spending is such a big slice of the UK's GDP.
Now, thinking about the Bank of England, they've held interest rates at 5.25%. Is that hitting the right balance, do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's such a delicate tightrope walk for the bank. Keeping rates at 5.25% is meant to push down on inflation, by making borrowing more expensive and cooling demand. But those higher rates also make it more expensive for businesses to borrow and invest, which can slow the economy down. So they're trying to cool inflation without, causing a major downturn.
Right.
There was talk about possible rate cuts later in the year, but honestly, that's going to depend heavily on inflation trends here and, crucially, on how stable the global economy looks.
Okay. Let's look outwards again then. What are the biggest global headwinds you see impacting the UK right now?
I'd point to three main areas of global pressure. First, ongoing geopolitical instability, the war in Ukraine. The situation in the Middle East that keeps pushing up global energy and food prices, hitting our import costs.
Right.
Second, China's economic slowdown. China is a huge engine for global growth, so when it slows, it impacts international trade and supply chains. We feel that here.
Okay.
And third, monetary policy in the U.S. The Federal Reserve's actions to tighten things have led to a strong dollar, and that makes imports more expensive for the UK too.
So really, the UK's path is pretty tied up with these bigger global movements.
To a very significant extent, yes. The UK is a relatively open economy, lots of international trade links. So we're naturally exposed to global shocks and trends. We don't exist in a bubble. It really underlines why building economic resilience is so important. Things like diversifying energy sources, having a solid industrial strategy to perhaps lessen some of those external risks.
Let's switch to the labor market. We keep hearing about low unemployment, which sounds good, but then productivity growth is really sluggish. How do those two things fit together? It seems a bit contradictory.
It is a paradox and definitely worth looking at closely. Yes, unemployment is low, under 4.5%. But the type of jobs has shifted somewhat. We've seen a rise in part-time work and growth in lower wage roles, especially in services.
Oh.
And at the same time, business investment has slowed down in really crucial areas like upgrading machinery and equipment, proper employee training, and importantly, research and development, R&D.
And so how does that lack of investment then lead to lower productivity?
Well, it's fairly direct. If businesses aren't investing enough in training their workforce or in adopting new technologies,
Yeah.
the natural result is slower productivity growth. You might have more people working, but the output per hour worked isn't increasing as fast as we'd like.
Right.
So the economy isn't getting much more efficient at making things or delivering services, and that ultimately caps how much the whole economy can grow.
So thinking about solutions, what are the main levers we could pull to actually boost productivity here?
It really needs a combination of strategic investments, public and private sector working together. Comprehensive reforms to skills and education are vital. We need to focus on equipping people for high-growth areas, digital tech, AI, green industries. That's crucial.
Hmm.
And alongside that, we need stronger incentives for businesses to actually adopt new technologies and innovate, maybe through better tax breaks or more targeted funding schemes.
Okay, turning to businesses themselves, what's the general mood out there? Are companies feeling confident enough to invest and expand?
The feeling, I'd say, is cautiously optimistic, but maybe leaning more towards cautious. Small and medium-sized businesses, the SMEs, they're facing particular difficulties with higher borrowing costs due to interest rates and also ongoing uncertainty about regulations.
And what about the bigger players, the larger corporations?
Larger firms seem generally more hesitant about committing to big spending projects right now. A major reason is the lack of clear long-term policy direction. Businesses really want more certainty on things like future taxes, how stable the post-Brexit trade setup with the EU will be, and predictability around energy prices before they make those huge investment decisions that take years to pay off.
We've mentioned it a few times, but Brexit,
Uh,
has the UK's departure from the EU settled into what you might call a new normal for businesses yet?
Hmm. It's nuanced. In some sort of operational ways, yes, there's been adaptation. Businesses have got used to some new customs processes, for example.
Right.
But in many really important areas, it's still far from settled. Trade with the EU, while still huge, is definitely more complex. There's more friction, more checks, more paperwork than before Brexit. And this growing difference in regulations between the UK and EU keeps creating challenges, especially for firms operating across both. Sources like Westferry Times have certainly highlighted the extra admin burdens and costs many firms are still dealing with.
So if you were advising policymakers right now, looking at all these challenges, what would be your top priorities to get growth moving again?
I'd focus on three key things, and they're all linked. First, stability. Clear, consistent signals on fiscal policy, taxes, and spending and monetary policy are absolutely essential to build confidence for both businesses and consumers.
Okay. Stability first.
Second, actively encouraging investment. Things like better capital allowances so businesses get more tax relief when they invest in plant and machinery. And targeted support for those high-potential sectors, green tech, digital innovation. We need that investment. And third, a real renewed focus on the workforce. Reforming training systems so they match what the future economy actually needs. That means focusing on schools for young people coming through, but also vital opportunities for mid-career retraining, especially in digital, AI, and those green skills we talked about.
And the green transition itself, how big a factor is that in this economic picture?
Well, green growth is a massive opportunity for the UK. We've made good progress, especially in areas like offshore wind. But to really unlock the potential of all these net zero industries, we need consistent long-term policy support. We need planning reforms streamlined so we can actually build the new green infrastructure faster. And continued investment in R&D is critical. Green tech may be a huge driver of future growth and jobs, but only if we have the right framework supporting it.
So pulling it all together, looking at where we are now, would you describe this as an actual economic crisis or is it something else?
Connecting it back, I'd say it's probably best described as a critical juncture rather than a full-blown crisis. Economic growth has been delayed, yes, and the recovery is definitely slower than hoped.
Okay.
But whether the UK economy can get back to strong, sustainable growth in the medium term, that really hinges on the policies that are put in place and how effective they are pretty soon.
Dr. James Fletcher, thank you so much. That's been incredibly clear and insightful, helping us pick apart these really complex economic threads.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to join the discussion.
And thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope this conversation has given you a clearer picture of the UK economy's current situation and, the reasons behind this delayed growth. It's definitely a challenging path ahead in some ways, but the economic landscape is always changing.
Indeed, careful policy and strategic action are really going to be vital for navigating what's ahead.
Right.
Now, just a final thought for you to mull over. Thinking about all the different policy ideas we've touched on today, tax changes, investment incentives, skills training, what single policy change do you think could have the most immediate, significant positive effect? Something that boosts both business confidence and helps households feel better off across the UK. And what's your reason for picking that one?
Definitely something to think about. Thank you again for tuning in to the deep dive.
Thank you and goodbye.